you and I were always trained to do what we did. That had a qual matrix. But our maintainers, the people in the medical community, people in industry, most of those instructions, you look at industry work instructions, you look at medical procedures, you look at maintenance procedures, and they're all just text with 2D pictures. Our whole goal is to improve performance, and not just improve, human performance, but the result of that, right? The result of better maintenance is more available F-15s, F-18s, ships, vehicles, tanks, what have you.
Hey everyone, and thanks for listening to another episode of DIB Innovators. Today I'm speaking with Scott Toppel, president at Avatar Partners. Scott, or might say Squeeze, former Hornet pilot, thanks for chatting with me today.
It was really great to be on. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, I was chuckling because I had my jets up and then you scrambled to show yours. So we're having...
Yeah, I had to. Yeah, all right, you got two. At least I'm going to get a Super Hornet in there. That's so I went through test pilot school in '98 at Empire, and I went through PAX, and you could do qual evals. So I got a flight in the F-16 in Arizona, but the one plane that I never got to fly that I always wanted to fly in was the Eagle.
Yeah, it was a mighty bird. It's done well. I haven't seen the new ones, the EX. I haven't flown that obviously, but it'd be interesting to see how different it is than the.
Yeah, we've actually been talking for a little bit to the Lake and Heath folks about doing some XR help for the folks out at Lake and Heath for the height system for the E and then or the C, E and then EX. We'll see how that works out, but yeah, we'd love to help out the maintainers out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, for those who don't know, we'll get more into it. Avatar Partners, augmented virtual reality. But knowing that as the background, why don't you share, you mentioned it, we talked about the Navy, share the pivotal moments in your career that helped shape, from the U.S. Navy to the private sector and now your position as president.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was thinking about the question, I was looking at it, and there's something really in particular about it, what I went through in the Navy as a combat and test pilot. I was on combat air patrol in an F-18F Super Hornet in Iraq in 2003. The F is the one with 2 seats. And we were on a CAP or combat air patrol, and we got a call from our controller for immediate close air support for troops in contact. And for those that don't know what that means, that's our guys getting shot at in the heart of downtown Baghdad. So our Marines are pinned down on the Al Jumeirah Bridge, and that's the bridge that crosses the Tigris River. And the building that they were getting shot at from was on the eastern side of that bridge. So you probably know Kim Campbell and her story about the A-10. So we got called in just after the next day where her flight lead was shot down. And so when we checked in, they said, hey, by the way, an A-10 just got shot down like an hour ago. And I said, well, don't worry, they won't get us. So as a young guy, I was pretty confident in that. But it was really interesting that day because the weather was 4,000 foot overcast, and I had no idea it could rain in Baghdad. But apparently it does actually rain out in Iraq. And also there were trench fires. So they set the oil on fire in all these trenches. So literally everything is brown. The air is brown with smoke and rain. There's overcast. So literally I did everything I was told I wouldn't be doing. Low level, close air support inside the super or missile engagement zone. We had to descend below our 10,000 foot minimum altitude down to like 3,000 feet. So we started our running at 3 and then leveled off around 1,000 over the target. We were carrying Maverick anti-tank missiles, but it turns out they work pretty excellent on buildings to kill snipers. So the target, like you said, was where the A-10s got shot down. And to give everybody kind of a picture of what this looks like, imagine flying just over the building tops in downtown Manhattan and trying to find another building across the river, the Brooklyn Bridge in Brooklyn. That's kind of what it looked like, but just everything is brown. Every time they keyed the radio, you could hear machine gun fire in the background. So it was pretty interesting. And so we basically had to get a talk on. We had to find the right target, and we had to put missiles into that building to clear it. And the reason that story really gelled with me is what we do at Avatar is when I had to go through that event, it was rapidly changing. I needed the right information at the right place at the right time. And I used augmented reality to actually do that. I flew with you've probably flown with the joint helmet mounted queuing system and a heads up display. And those are augmented reality. So for those that don't know, the joint helmet mounting cueing system is where you have your visor and it projects your heads up display information in front of your right eye. So I had critical flight information at the point of need, when and where I needed. I actually used that heads up display and the joint helmet mounting cueing system to make sure I was on the right target. And I had to have that exactly right. So I was thinking about things like teamwork, using augmented reality to accomplish your job and do it better. And also I had to be perfect because after I came off and reviewed the tapes, there were people driving to work in the background. So I could, if I missed that building, I would have hit somebody literally driving their car to work, in and around downtown Baghdad. So when we talk about precision, we talk about coordination, helping people perform better. That kind of really reminded me about why Avatar became a really attractive place for me to land after the Navy.
Yeah, what a great story and chaos. It is interesting how the training you do in those situations, and then, you have to deal with the situation you've never trained for, but because the training's so good just all around, you were able to, flex into that.
And that was the other thing too, by the way, that reminds me is I was coming off target and my Wizzo just yells at me, move the jet, move the jet. So I just pulled in plane as hard as I could, right? I go, what? He said, well, they're shooting at it. And so you couldn't see the tracers in the daytime, but I was actually pretty relaxed in combat because, as you know, from training at Nellis and Fallon, the training was so much harder, right? Getting reps and sets, for us as aviators, we always got reps and sets. We were always trained to do what we do. So when I was in combat in Afghanistan and Iraq, the combat part was way easier than the strike missions I was on in Fallon. And so I also thought about the reps and sets that we do, that we allow you to do using immersive technology so you can practice by doing over and over again. We were afforded that luxury in aviation. And what we're trying to do at Avatar is have that same opportunity for maintainers, for medical people, for people in industry to get that same training, to get those same reps and sets in an environment that makes sense.
Yeah, well, that's super important. So how did that work then? Did you just, retire from the Navy and then pick this up, or what? Because a lot of folks, there have been folks on here just talking about the transition out of, service into the commercial.
Yeah, that's it. So my last job was at Commander Naval Air Forces Atlantic, and you have an F-35 in the background. My job was the F-35 class desk for the Bravos and Charlies. That meant I helped field the first Navy and Marine Corps Bs and Cs into the fleet. I was responsible for all of the upgrades and things like that. And I was also responsible for mission planning. I did a lot of work over the years in acquisition as well as implementation of, you're familiar with the Joint Mission Planning System. You used it for the F-15 and the F-18. So you know as well as I do that the jumps help was not helpful, right?
Yes.
And so for us, like if you were above the rank of major or lieutenant commander, you weren't even allowed on the jumps machine, right? And I'm sure that was the same in the Air Force squadron, right? So imagine that an 05 as an instructor, me going out on a strike hop, an instructor, I had an 06 in the front, a colonel or a Navy captain, and we had to do weaponeering on the jumps computer. And we just sat there and just worked our way through it. We were dropping Mark 76 practice bombs, and we just barely made our way through it. We're out at El Centro and got it done. So when I was at Air Land and I was responsible for some of the mission planning aspects, Marlo Brooke, our CEO and founder, came out with her team to brief us on their ideas of creating classified YouTube style videos for someone to learn as you would at home, but learn how to plan jumps missions. So Dave, you watched a YouTube video to learn how to do something?
Yeah, like, change a tire on my car.
So it's funny because if I ask 10 men, 9 of them will say something about their car. And then the other one will say something about the house, plumbing, electrical. Women, it's weird because, women are different. Women will give me all sorts of different answers, cooking, makeup, whatever. But guys are consistent. But you could have, you may be barely enough to remember what a Chilton's manual is.
No, I don't actually.
So a Chilton's manual in the old days is when you wanted to work on your car, there was no such thing when we were kids as YouTube, right? You had to go read, it was also landlines that nobody knows about anymore either. But there's a thing called a Chilton's manual. So if you had like a 67 Mustang, you could buy this manual and it told you how to fix everything on a Mustang. But you certainly didn't try to look it up in a book, how to change a tire, or God forbid, break out the crappy instruction set that's in the car, right? Why did you use a YouTube video?
Just simplicity and visually
Right.
seeing the effort it takes for different things. And,
Right. So you found that a video allowed you to rapidly get the information and allowed you to have it right there in front of you, and you could just watch somebody do it rather than interpret some written instruction, right? You got a chance to see it. Well, that was what the Avatar presented to me as the mission planning class. That says, hey, how would you like to do the same thing you just did to learn how to fix your engine, but do airborne electronic attack or multi-deployment JDAM missions? Or I don't know if you're folks loaded like crypto, like loading the crypto or TAMAC, loading the map stuff, as you know, that could be disastrous on the jumps machine. So I thought that was a great idea. And I asked the owner, hey, do you need help on this? And she said, well, we need help right now. So as soon as I left the Navy, I arranged to come here as a SME and then have progressed to become the president.
Oh, what a great story. Yeah, and super important. I mean, you probably just simple things of briefing missions in an airplane, of out on the chalkboard or the whiteboard, and by seeing it, it's just so different.
It is. And so one of the great things about I did some time, I was in acquisition for the last half of my career. So I like to say I bought stuff versus blew stuff up. And when I left the Navy and we started up this program for the F-18, we had those video modules out there within 2 years of her coming to see me. So normal acquisition time, for those that aren't familiar with the lengthy government acquisition process, from the idea to something getting fielded is anywhere between 5 years and over 10 years. And so we're able to rapidly get usable modules out to the fleet just over 2 years from the idea to execution, which I was extremely proud of as an acquisition guy.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So specifically for Avatar partners, what is the mission, and what are, I'd say, your primary efforts to bring this capability to users?
Right. So our real mission is we really exist to support and train warfighters, first responders, industry, and academia using proven emerging technology. And we want to improve the lives of all those folks. So that's our real mission. So that's why we exist. And we basically, we're kind of technology agnostic. Like right now, our main focus, you can see when our website's been redesigned, we're really focusing on, it's pretty hard to interpret all this stuff. So we really lump it under the umbrella of digital transformation, digital twin technology that encompasses augmented virtual reality, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and it's very confusing. And if you ask 10 people what digital transformation means, you'll get 10 different answers. So we've done a couple webinars about, hey, here is our interpretation of digital transformation. And you don't have to dive in with everything. You can go in a little bit here and a little bit there. We want to help people get a roadmap on how they want to do this digital transformation. And it is inevitable, right? You're going to have to implement these things if you're a business, if even a government. If we want to keep up with everybody else, you're going to have to do that. And so the way we started down that path as far as completing the mission is where about a decade ago, the F-18 maintenance community came to us to see if we could do the same thing we did for the jumps video system for the maintenance manuals. I said, why? You have a computer system that give you your maintenance manuals. I said, well, look at it. And it was really just, and you've seen them for the F-15, they're just little PDFs, right, with crummy stick figure drawings. I've got 2,600 hours, over 2,000 in the F-18. And I looked at the drawings for like the landing gear well, and I couldn't figure it out for the life of me. So I don't know how many hours you think you've done pre-flighting the F-15, but the jet right on the outside. And if I can't interpret the drawings, and I've been on that jet, hundreds of hours outside of it, how is an 18 to 25-year-old going to interpret that same drawing? And so that's when we got into the augmented reality, and we used internal money to develop the first augmented reality maintenance aid. And we're the first to really develop what we call a dual mode system. And you can use it on the plane with automatic target recognition on a 3D object. And you can also use it in an office space where you can practice getting those same instructions just outside of the environment. And so now what we've done is that's kind of taken us from the video-based system to augmented reality to full immersive reality, which is augmented, virtual, extended, and now digital transformation, where you can now lump all that stuff into, including everything together, so you're not missing anything, if that makes sense. Yeah. So
all right, Scott. Why don't you tell me about the use cases for this?
Yeah. So one of the one of the very first use cases we did was with the U.S. Coast Guard 87-foot patrol boat. And it's a really good example of what we mean by what we call dual mode augmented reality. And what I mean by dual mode is you have an offsite mode or an open space mode. And think about that as just like the office you're sitting in, being able to throw on a headset like I have over my shoulder and be able to have a digital twin or a 3D digital representation of the system that'll act very, very similar or exactly like the real system. So in a resource constrained environment, like I want to practice changing the PC1, PC2 on the F-15, the hydraulic pump, I don't have an F-15 sitting here, but I can then digitally create one so that you can go through all of the procedures as if you were doing it on the real airplane to even simulate the entire airplane. Now, the reason we want to do the dual mode system is we can take that same environment that we learned in here in our office space setting. We can go out onto the ramp and actually overlay those same instructions on the real environment mode. And that's what we call on-site mode or real environment mode. And what you're going to see here in this video, so you can see there's off-site, on-site. What you're going to see is this is a real example of a failure that occurred on the 87-foot Coast Guard patrol boat, where this is the digital engine controller and a comm card within the system and one of the modules failed. And that unfortunately rendered that engine dead in the water. It required the Surface Force Logistics Center flying out a maintenance team to go fix it. This procedure on paper took 4 hours. With the HoloLens 2 and the AR system, that same subject matter expert, that 7-level technician or 9-level, the senior technician in the Air Force, did it in 45 minutes. Then we tried it out on a 3-level, like a journeyman, been in the Coast Guard a few years, had some experience, did it in an hour. But then we took a 0-level, had only been in the Coast Guard 3 months, never even seen the ship before, and he did an hour and 15 minutes. Made a couple mistakes, was able to go back and forth and go through the procedure. So now what you're seeing is the real environment mode, where we've used a 3D automatic target lock-on. This is someone using the Microsoft HoloLens 2. And now you can see we're overlaying those same procedures on the real equipment, and that person's going through and doing the procedures step by step. So just as we talked about when we're targeting a building in a rack using a heads-up display, the instructions are clear, precise, unambiguous, and in a format that really makes sense because they've been in this environment for a long time. They can practice with the open space mode and be super comfortable with the procedure, very comfortable with the equipment. I've never been on the Coast Guard 87-foot patrol boat, but I can tell you what, I've done this demo probably 1,000 times, and I could walk on. As long as you showed me where the engine room was, I could do this thing almost from memory.
Well, that is super cool. And you can see the value in that. That is, I could use that trying to take the top off my Jeep or something for sure.
That one, yeah, my neighbor has one of those. And yeah, that can be problematic.
Well, that's great. So, how do you see, AR, VR, augmented reality, continuing to reshape? So that's a simple, I'd say simple, but that's a way to do some on-site, off-site. But how do you see this trend going forward? And what are you guys looking at?
Yeah, sure. So when we're talking about, the future of training or shaping that stuff, well, like I said, a lot of this learned by doing. And we're talking about, and this is a little bit why I'm excited about being here. You and I were always trained to do what we did. I had a qual matrix, but our maintainers, the people in the medical community, people in industry, most of those instructions, you look at industry work instructions, you look at medical procedures, you look at maintenance procedures, and they're all just text with 2D pictures. Our whole goal is to improve performance, and not just improve, human performance, but the result of that, right? The result of better maintenance is more available F-15s, F-18s, ships, vehicles, tanks, what have you, right? We are all about operational readiness and availability, because let's face it, the world is a dangerous place now, and our forces need to be ready. The theme for the Tailhook Convention, where us naval aviators get together, was be ready. Admiral Paparo came out from PACOM and said, hey, I need you guys to be ready to execute. We've had a group that came back, a Carrier Strike Group 3, and they were doing just like I did, things that they hadn't trained before. How do you shoot down a drone that's being launched from, Yemen? and they've had to rapidly adapt and respond. So being able to have those assets readily available so they can be used in combat or in training is extremely important. So that's how I see us use this technology to really shape how folks are going to learn to do stuff. And it's really in an environment that people are used to. Kids nowadays are used to immersive technology out of the gate.
Yeah. How about outside of the defense? Where are you seeing the most traction with your use cases?
We've really started to a couple places, medical. We're starting to get into telemedicine, and we have a product called XR Remote where you can basically what we're doing here on Zoom, but the host you can use in the headset, and you can drop, or a phone, you can drop AR overlays in the real world. So if you're doing instruction, you can do that. Then you can save that as a photo or video and kind of record the session. So if I need to phone a friend and they can walk me through a procedure, we've got that. We're starting, they're still coming aboard because the trades. Try to find an electrician or an HVAC person nowadays, right? That's really skilled. Who comes to your house that you really trust right now as your electrician? How old are they?
I haven't found that person.
Right? So my plumber, my electrician, my HVAC guy are all in their 50s, 60s, and sometimes even 70s. Right now, for example, at the fleet readiness centers or the life cycle management centers, look around and see who's working on these airframes, right? Or who's working on ships. They're all graybeards like us, man. And we need to get younger generation trained up and excited about work in the trades. I'm a big proponent of now going into the trades. It's a fantastic career choice, but in order to be excited about it, you have to draw them into being excited to work there. So we're looking at this type of technology. We've built virtual reality for pre-apprenticeship electricians training for prisoners and parolees to get a skill when they're coming out. So that is another big thing, is the trades and upskilling the folks here. Plenty of people want to work. There's a lot of good jobs. We need to give them the skill they need to go ahead and do those.
That's great. It would make a huge difference and make it exciting. I mean, guys coming off Fortnite, and now they can apply that skill set, or that
100%. Yeah.
I mean, what challenges do you foresee, taking extended reality and continue to push this through the defense industry?
Yeah, there's a few. The first one is really standardization. We've got, even within the Air Force, you have different innovation cells that were just given Microsoft HoloLens 2s and, hey, go figure it out, right? And trying to figure out, okay, who's doing what. We actually got a call from one of them and said, hey, what do I do with this HoloLens? So we gave them that Coast Guard application, as well as the Air Force one we built for non-destructive testing, and said, here's some things you can brief, and here's how you might want to utilize this. So standardization, and one of the aspects that we really agree with is our software is one of the only ones that complies with the only open standard for tagging 3D XR data. That's the International Mixed Reality Standards Association, or IMERSA. It's free to join. It's free to download the standard. And if someone complies with the standard, what we can do right now is we have our products incorporate that. So we have XR Create Essentials and Professional. So Essentials you can download on your phone and create your own. Then you can take that data, immerse, export, and import it into the Unity-based system for a programmer to continue on. So again, reduces the time and cost for development, increases standardization, reduces risk. The other one is your company's pretty darn familiar with is cybersecurity. Incorporating the risk managed framework compliance is extremely cumbersome. Trying to get an authority to operate is expensive, cumbersome, and is a little bit time late. It's very difficult to go through the ATO process right now. And I understand definitely the importance of making sure our systems are compliant, because as you know, the only real war that we're actually doing shooting in is cyberspace right now. And people don't really understand that yes, if you're not protected, then what we've worked so hard to develop, the trade secrets, our edge in industry and the defense just goes right over to our foreign adversaries. And all the hard work we've done, they can just simply copy and paste it. Trade compliance is another one. The device you saw, the HoloLens 2, is actually not trade compliant. So trying to put it on a GSA schedule. And then the future of see-through devices. You saw the HoloLens 2 is like a heads-up display. So you have a combiner glass that's a see-through device, the HoloLens 2 and the Magic Leap 2. But the futures of both those devices are really uncertain. There is, if you can build a ruggedized see-through device, that's fantastic, which I think Anduril is going to do it. They're working with Microsoft right now for the Army's IVAS program. And since Palmer Luckey was the one that invented the Oculus in the first place, they will probably be the first ones to come up with a true see-through device that we can use in an environment, right? Because try to put the Microsoft HoloLens out of the flight line, or the Magic Leap 2, they're still not ruggedized. So those are kind of the big challenges. A ruggedized, trade compliant device that can be used in all the environments is a big one.
And again, you guys are agnostic. You're more looking at the content development and the experience side, regardless of what.
So if you present us a device, the XR Create right now automatically will load up and distribute on the Meta 3, the Magic Leap, the HoloLens, and the Apple Vision Pro. We're going to be incorporating the Vario XR4 Focal Edition and Secure Edition, again, because it's a trade compliant device, as well as the HTC Vive Focus Vision, most likely. Again, really high quality video pass-through devices that can provide mixed reality, that can also be, purchased using government procurement methods.
Where do you see AI taking this from your side on the, content? And
so we've incorporated artificial intelligence within the XR Create platform. So AI Create allows you to incorporate, basically take a PDF as you're used to see it on some of these technical manuals. You can basically import that PDF content. It'll just populate the step-by-step procedure. So I tried it out in the office once, and I just did like a 10-step procedure. It took me about 35 minutes to type it all in there. And then I AI imported it and did it in a minute and a half. So if you're thinking about cost and time to develop, we want it to be affordable, right? So that's the AI Create aspect. And then AI Coach is a large language model AI system that uses the source material you've loaded, and you can ask it questions, and it'll give you the answer based on the source material. But it'll also think you can ask it really interesting questions, and it'll try to answer them. So, but it's only using your source material. It's not connected to the internet. So the source material itself is stored. It can be stored on a GCC high or government protected cloud services, which are DoD Impact Level 5 or the equivalent of industry standard. And also it's certified to contain protected health information, or PHI, which is really important to the medical community.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how quickly that stuff evolves, but that's great.
It is. If you're not using AI right now, you're definitely behind the power curve for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. So if you had, there's kind of an interesting question, 30 seconds to pitch Avatar partners to a potential customer, what would you say?
I would say don't be enamored by holograms, right? I want to understand we are really results oriented. So what are you trying to achieve? So that's the thing. What is the problem that you're trying to achieve? More, if you're trying to do something better, increase your knowledge retention, reduce the time to train, reduce errors. If those are some of your problems, resource constrained, that is when you look to Avatar partners for digital transformation. If you're totally fine using manuals, don't call us. But if you want to explore the world of digital transformation and you don't know what to do, you give us a call and we'll definitely walk you through the process to see where it determines. It's not a panacea. So we really want to make sure it's focused. It's probably more than 30 seconds.
But that's right.
But I'm a fighter pilot, man. I'll talk a little bit longer than I'm supposed to, I guess.
So is that part of the biggest myth, you think, with implementing AR, VR? It's getting enamored with the picture instead of the outcome?
No, I think you'll like this one. So the myth that I got is I'm going to be a robot, right? It's going to make me into a robot. I'm just going to follow the procedures and it's just going to turn me into a robot. But I think about it this way. Did you fly the T-38 and in training?
I did.
Okay. And then you switched to the F-15C, which had a heads-up display. Did that make you a better or worse pilot having access to a heads-up display?
As far as being a pilot, it probably...
Or just flying the plane better?
Yeah, there's probably nuances of it, but not that much. There were pieces of it that were...
For me, I think the way I think about it is I could jump into an F-18F today and I could fly it within 10 feet and 1 knot using the heads-up display, right? I can be more precise after not flying it forever. So to me, that's where I had the information in front of me. And that's what we're finding with AR is, yes, I have the information in front of me. What we've talked about for that as well is you also have access when you're crew chiefs or maintainers. What really makes a good crew chief or maintainer in the Air Force?
Yeah, the ability to look at situations and hold up to a high standards, perform to that standard, and
Right.
never waver on it. I mean, it's that high quality, the expectation, and it's just done right.
Yeah. But how do they get to that point, right? How do they get to be a 5-level?
Lots of training.
Right. Lots of experience, right? You have a lot of times in order to train on something, like if I need to train on, if I don't want to train to work on the F-15 hide system, generally the hide system would have to break, right? I have to have some sort of problem to do that. And you basically are training over the shoulder. So I only get the training when something goes wrong on the maintenance side. So, but imagine being able to induce any fault, right? Be able to get a whole bunch of reps and sets in different environments. The main thing is that experience, right? And so what most of the time, the 7-level, 5-level, your senior Air Force or your senior Navy maintenance people or senior Army people, the way they're training people is they're teaching someone what to do and how to do it. Jack the plane up, take the bolts off the tire, remove the tire, that kind of thing. And you're going through what to do and how to do it. But what usually gets overlooked is the why, right? What happened on this one deployment where, I shouldn't do it this way because I didn't realize till recently that it could be fatal to change a tire on a C-130. I've learned people got killed doing that. You never would think that someone could die doing a tire change. That's a pretty severe mistake, right? If you kill someone changing a tire. So the idea is I want to be able to practice getting those reps and sets over again and be more precise. And I want to be able to focus on the why, right? If I come to the session with a senior person armed with what to do and how to do it, then that senior bubble, they could talk about the deployment where you'd experience something very unusual or the stuff that's outside the manual. And I kind of look at it, there's a magazine in the Navy called Mech Magazine where the maintainers read it. And there's a picture of a little wedding ring broke, but there's the guy who had the wedding ring and it stripped his finger off to the bone. He was wearing it, walking around the flight deck. I saw that picture in Mech Magazine 34 years ago, and I can recall it now. And so the why is what sticks, right? So if you're able to have your maintainers and your people that's training, whether it's a medical technician coming to the session armed with what to do and how to do it, we can then have that instructor-student interaction, which we don't want to reduce. We want to make that instructor-student interaction of a higher quality. And I think about it the way you and I used to do it. Simulators don't replace flight time, right? They just make it of a higher quality.
Yeah, that's as you kept talking. I'm like, yeah, this is the intensive simulators. The more realistic you can make it, the better. Now you're taking that into
right
areas that necessarily didn't have as much background of needing that because it was just doing it real time. Right. But now you're applying, the scenarios that are really, accelerating the learning curve.
Exactly. And the way I think about it, the way you and I used to live is I was an instructor in the FRS or the Navy equivalent of the RTU, the training unit to teach people how to fly the F-18. And if I had a kid, we'd do a 4v4 intercept flight over the ocean here. And if you hadn't been warmed up, right, you get maybe 3-4 runs in, right, before you got to go home. And if you goon up the first run because of switchology or behind timeline or you messed up your comms, that's 25 to 33% of your training is out the window. But if that same student had gone through a simulator 2 days prior and done 20 runs, they've come to that session armed with the muscle memory, the decision-making speed, et cetera. We want to do the same thing across industry, across academia, and across the other aspects of defense, like maintenance and medical, things like that. We want to take the same ability that we use in a simulator to be able to do in any environment.
Absolutely. So unfortunately, Squeeze, we're going to have to start wrapping this up. But if if folks want to, understand, how to follow what you're doing or get more information on Avatar Partners, how best can they do that?
Brand new website now, avatarpartners.com, and look me up on LinkedIn and happy to talk.
That's great. Well, thanks so much, sir. Keep in touch. Look forward to grabbing a frosty beverage sometime at a tail hook.
That sounds awesome. Didn't get to tell my haunted jet story.
We'll get that on the next one.
Get that on the next one. Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate it, man. This was fun.